went there, and I did this, and I went there, never did that. And God's going to say, you know what, I'm sorry. I don't know who you are. I mean, you never reached out for a relationship with me. It doesn't mean that God doesn't know you. It means that you never reached out for a relationship. And I realized that I had been kind of, I'd been kind of cruising along on my grandfather's reputation. And I remember sitting there at 13 years old thinking, imagining myself standing in front of God one day and going, you know who my grandfather is, right? And God saying, sure. Bob Nitz? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do. And, right, you know my mom, right? Oh, Barb? Sure, absolutely. Well, God, I mean, I memorized like 600 verses, right? Yeah, I know that. You see where I'm going with this? None of that mattered. And I realized that I had never for myself accepted that free gift that is the foundation of a relationship with God. Now, I want everybody in the room to notice that I didn't say Catholic or Baptist or Episcopalian. You can't even say that word without making it lofty. Episcopalian. It's such a cool word. Wesleyan Methodist. Charismatic. Pentecostal. Did you notice? I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Those are all man-made words that, quite honestly, forgive me, I don't mean to offend, mean nothing to God. Nothing. Nothing. You know what means something to him? You. You mean something to him. You personally. And so many people and so many religious organizations have made it so much more about the religious organization than about you. It's been lost. And suddenly there is developed a list of rules and regulations by which you come into God's good graces. If you don't hear anything else I say to you today, listen to this. You're already in his good graces. Do you hear me? You hear what I'm saying? You like to wear anime costumes? Cool. You like purple hair? Cool. You like piercings? Cool. God is not concerned with any of that. I promise you. He loves you. Inside. You. The you that's you. Not how long you wear your hair, not whether you like anime, not whether you like to wear goth clothing. That's not important. And one day everyone's going to realize that. They're going to realize that God was nuts about you. He just wanted to be close to you. And there were no conditions. It wasn't about what kind of music you chose to listen to. It wasn't about how you voted. There are much deeper things involved here, you guys. Way deeper things than that. These little things that we make religion dependent upon, those things are going to be gone before you know it. And you know what's going to be left? Just you and him. So I heard this lesson, this chapel message, and I thought, wow, this that hits me. That resonates with me. And I took it with me back to class that afternoon. I really struggled with it. I thought, is it possible that I could just about live in church and not really know God? Is it possible that I could memorize all of those verses and not really know him? Very much so. Very much the same way I could read an autobiography about General Custer, but I don't know him. I could learn the facts, but never really know him. But as is often the case, if you let enough time go by when you're feeling something like that, it kind of dies off, right? You kind of resist that pull, and you busy yourself. You busy yourself with other things. Oh, I got to get back to work. I got to get to school. I got to whatever. And the next thing you know, I don't feel that weight anymore. What day did I say this was? No, what day was the chapel service at school? Wednesday. What did I say happens Wednesday night?
Wednesday night church.
Wednesday night church service. So literally 3 hours after I had just gotten this lesson from John Ferguson in school, 3 hours later, I'm back in church, in the same building, in the same auditorium, only now it's the church service, Wednesday night church service. It's not the school service, the school chapel. And my grandfather was speaking that evening. Now, to my knowledge, he didn't have any kind of conversation with John Ferguson. But you want to guess what passage he spoke on?
The same one.
The exact same one. It was like a double-barrel shotgun. I'm like, this is too weird. Why would they say this? Why would they talk about the same thing? All I can think is that that was what was meant to happen. That was what God intended. And so that evening, I remember stepping out. For those of you that are not church folk, we had an invitation, an altar call. That's what they call it. Where basically, if something has affected you or has moved you and you wanted to talk with somebody, you would come up to the front of the church and you would meet with someone and sit down and talk with them about whatever it was, right? So I got out of my pew and I walked down, and you should have seen my grandpa's face. Victor, right? Because I mean, who would have? He would have never expected that. Probably neither did my mom. I think she was playing the piano at the time. And you know what else I remember? I remember another kid coming down with me named Jimmy Elsmore. His parents were missionaries in Alaska. And his parents wanted him to go to Christian school, but they were missionaries, and so he literally lived with a family in our community to go to school there, because his parents wanted him to go to school, Christian school there. Very much the same story, right? Missionary kid now. Not preacher kid, but missionary kid, same thing, right? He knew it all, he was always around it, he had it all worked out, but again, just like me, just kind of coasting along. Hey, you know who my parents are, right? Missionaries and stuff. You know? So he and I remember we went down front together. And that was the moment that I made a conscious decision for myself, not on behalf of my mom, not in the name of my grandfather, not based on my Christian school attendance or my Bible verse memory or any of that. Just plain Victor, realizing that I had never personally accepted the gift that God had offered me for myself. So I did that when I was 13, and I know it was in May when I was 13, and we won't talk about what year that was, but... And you know what I've learned over the years, and we were talking about this last night. Last night I went out to dinner with a friend of mine that I went to college with. And we just got into this conversation about this whole idea that, religion. I get so many fan letters from people saying, I understand you're very religious. And I always write them back and I go, no, I'm not. And it freaks them out. They're like, what? Wait a minute. Yes, you are. No, and what I mean by that is, I just don't even like that word, religion. To me, religion kind of is a word that man created to try to define and package and explain the things of God and how to reach him in our understanding. Religion. Never liked it. And, you know, I grew up in a very, very, very strict, legalistic community. I know this is going to be a repetition from last year, but it's poignant. I remember my mom saying, "Don't ever tell your grandfather that I let you see Star Wars. Don't ever tell him you go to movies." Remember this? Don't tell him you go to movies. Because then a lot of people try so hard to define their religion, their faith, by what they do or don't do. Hear me? Even now. So many people try to define their faith or their relationship. That's better. So many people try to define their relationship with God by a list of regulations that they follow or don't follow. They do or they don't do, right? And if you got more checklists than the good side, you're okay. But, you know, and then you got the bad side, and you try to balance all that. We were talking about this last night, and I think so many people in this world, and I think a lot of people in this room, I may be wrong, but I doubt it, because it's very common. People have come to believe that God's love and approval and acceptance of you is entirely based on what you do or don't do. That it is entirely, what's the word? Right? Conditional. It's entirely conditional. Well, God will love you, but not if you watch anime. God hates that black stuff you wear. God can't stand that tattoo. You think God's that petty? Really? You know what that makes God? It makes him a big version of you. This is a concept I thought of once. You know why people have so many problems with God? Because they can't seem to get it in their heads how big God is. They think God is a supersized human version of us. See what I'm saying? You understand? Whatever we think, or however we reason, however we come to conclusions, God must do the same thing, only he's just bigger. It's just more of whatever that is. You see what I'm saying? Like concepts of justice or fairness. We as human beings have, we think this is fair, or we think this is just, or we think that's unjust. And so we assume that God's thought processes are just like ours. He is so far beyond us. We don't get that. And the more technology we develop and the smarter we think we are, we can't even conceive of the fact that there is a being so far beyond us that we are like ants. You know what I mean? That what's the Bible say? His ways are not our ways. Now that sounds pretty simple, but expand on that. The way we do things, the way we think, the way we believe, he is not the same as we are. He's not a big version of us. That's why I always kind of didn't like it when I hear people refer to God as the man upstairs. You ever heard that? The big man. The big man upstairs. No, he's not a man. I promise you. We have lots of problems. But I think that that's maybe one of the reasons why we think that because we love conditionally,
yeah, you got that right, Vic.
Because we judge you, accept you or don't accept you based on what you've done or not done, or what list of rules you can, right? That's the way we do things, right? That must be the way God does it, only bigger, on a grand universal scale.
Vic, have you heard
Hold on one second, babe. That's not the way he does it. If you take